I do these things daily, but obviously sometimes I'm on the road, or it doesn't work to do it live some days. So, but this week it's 4 days in a row, and excited tomorrow because I have another guest. So we're going to go 5 days this week. And tomorrow my guest is Jake Terry. He's the head football coach at Elk Point Jefferson. And they're probably on the road up to Volga, South Dakota. They play Sioux Valley tonight in the football playoffs. So great. It'll be great to hear his perspective tomorrow. And I don't know what we're going to talk about because, they're going into a playoff game. I think, they're very well matched and evenly matched team, and they've got a great chance of winning. But Sioux Valley is a very good team, and Elk Point could come on the short end of that as well. So I don't know if I'm going to be talking to a fired up coach that's ready for another week of high school football, or if I'm going to get a coach that, for everybody that's coached, and we talked about this with Coach Christensen yesterday, the ending of a year. If we get that, it'll be interesting to hear his perspective on that. So good luck to the Huskies. I've been fortunate to speak to their team a few times over the last few years, and in building that relationship there. And I really wish the Huskies well tonight. So, and today we have a guest, and a lot of my guests I know very, very well. And my guest today, I know, but I don't know her very, very well. I've met Marcia for a few times, and I met her through a friend of mine, Mike Henriksen. Many of you know Mike. Everybody probably knows Mike, or he knows you, because Mike knows everybody in South Dakota. So, but I got to meet her a couple times, and I was thinking, Marcia, first of all, thanks for joining me today. And, where are you joining us from today?
I am here in my home office in Sioux Falls.
Awesome. And, I mentioned Mike, go back. How long have you known Mike?
Oh, gosh. I don't even know. Quite a few years. I mean, his wife taught in Flandreau, which is my hometown, and just through sports and different sports people that I know, and and the media and that type of thing. I don't know. I don't know. It's been 10 or 15 years, probably, at least.
Yeah, Mike's one of those guys that you feel like you've known him forever, because
yeah,
he's easy to talk to, and he's always very supportive of everything.
Yes.
We always have fun in our lives and things like that. So
for sure.
You mentioned growing up in Flandreau. Tell us a little bit about your background and kind of where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up in Flandreau, like I said. I was actually born and raised there. I went to the public school. My mom and dad were both lifelong educators at the Flandreau Indian School. My mom taught home economics, and my dad was a teacher, coach, and administrator. And my brothers and I all went to the public school. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, Flandreau Indian School is an off-reservation boarding school. So the students that go there start at grade 9, 10, 11, 12. So all of us grew up in the public school system, and that's where we stayed and graduated from high school. So Flandreau's my hometown. I get back there quite often. I have an older brother, Stu, that still lives there. So I get back there, and I have a lot of golfing buddies there that I get back to see during the summertime and whatnot. So that's where I grew up. And then I went on to college. I went to Dakota State for a couple years, and then graduated from Northern State University. I had transferred because I wanted to get a degree in special education, a major, and they didn't offer that at DSU at the time. Well, it was DSC when I went there, Dakota State College. So I went to Northern and finished up. And then I went right into the teaching profession like a month after I graduated. I graduated in December, and a month later I landed my first job. So I did that, and I ended up teaching in the Sioux Falls School District for 33 years. So I had a 34 and a half year teaching career in the public school system. And in Sioux Falls, I taught special education for 25 years. And then the last 10 years, I started a Native American Connections program at my high school, which was Roosevelt High School, and did that and totally loved it. Not that I didn't love special ed, I really did. I loved working with the kids, and I'm still connected to a lot of them today, but I needed a change and the paperwork was starting to get a little overwhelming. And so I thought, okay, this is what I mean. What do? You create your own job, right? So that's kind of what I did. And I retired 6 years ago from the Sioux Falls School District. I took the early retirement incentive, but I kept on teaching at the University of Sioux Falls. So this is my 14th year as an adjunct professor at UF. And I teach a course in the graduate program called Native American Studies for Educators. So it's specifically for people going into the education field. So that's a little bit about my background, my family. I have 2 grown adult kids. So I have a son, Nate, that lives in Denver. I have a daughter, Shelby, that lives in the Sacramento, California area. And I have 3 Takojas, or grandchildren, 10, 7, and 4. And of course, my 3 brothers, I still have 3 brothers that are around. And so I see them all the time. And, you know, we stay pretty tight.
You mentioned your parents being educators, and fascinating that they were at the Flandreau Indian School, and then you went to the public school, like you mentioned. You know,
Yep.
that time, like growing up, you know, I suppose you probably competed against maybe some of your dad's teams or your dad's students and mom's students for sure. What was that time like?
Yeah, that was weird. So, so when girls basketball first started, I started playing basketball. Girls sports were just coming, you know, into the picture when I was in high school. So I did participate in cheerleading all throughout high school. I did golf, I did track, and I did basketball. And so we did compete in basketball against the Flandreau Indian School. And I know that had to have been pretty rough for my dad, but for some reason I always had my best games against them.
That's good. Maybe it's a motivation that, you know, for.
Yeah. And then when I was a senior in junior, my dad was still coaching. He was still head coach for all of the sports that he, you know, was involved in: basketball, cross country, and track were the 3 main ones. And so I had to cheer against him a couple times, and that was kind of hard. But you know, I had my job to do, so I was, you know, leading the Flyers, the Flandreau Flyers.
That's good. That's good. And you mentioned, you know, going on to follow your parents, you know, in the education field. And when they stopped teaching, did they stay in Flandreau then? And, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. Until, you know, pretty late in life. Actually, my mother passed away when I was 15 years old, in 1973. She passed away very unexpectedly. And then my dad stayed in Flandreau for quite a few years. He moved to Sioux Falls, and it was kind of after he retired. So it was probably in the late 90s, maybe mid to late 90s. He decided to move to Sioux Falls, and he lived very close proximity to me. So I would always, you know, go over and see him all the time. And I was pretty close to my dad.
Yeah, I've heard that, and special connection between you two. And now, you know, having your grown kids, you know, you mentioned in California and Denver, obviously got to be kind of hard.
It's tough, especially with COVID. So I just actually got back from California Monday night. I was out there for 10 days, and it had been 8.5 months. And I decided that was too long for me not to see my family. So I just booked a ticket, and I thought I'll just take every precaution I totally can. And I got on the plane with my mask and my hand sanitizer, and I went through Denver, and my son jumped on the plane with me, and then we flew out to Sacramento together. So I was able to see them.
Well, that's great.
We had a great time.
Yeah. And, Marcia, obviously, in the world today, let's transition into some, real world, not, I mean, just different stuff, I guess.
Right.
Obviously in the world today, with the social justice issues and, you see our political systems, attacking each other and some of the just nasty things people are saying. Maybe can we talk maybe about when you were in high school and, go back to those Flandreau days,
Yep.
Your parents over at the Flandreau Indian School. I can imagine you heard some things and seen some things at the public school or within Flandreau, not bashing Flandreau by any means. It's a great town, but I'm sure that started early in your life that you heard and seen things that,
Yeah. Yeah, it really did. And I've said this before, but I think because of my mom and dad's stature in the community, um, my brothers and I were shielded from that somewhat. My dad grew up in Flandreau. He was a 3-sport athlete in high school. He went on to play at Augustana. And my mom was they were both very active in the community. They were active in the church, Eastern Star. My dad was a Mason. My mom was a 4-H leader. They bowled, they golfed, they did everything. So they were very, very active people. And I think, I was shielded from that somewhat because of their standing in the community. At that time, my dad was early on in my life, my dad started becoming an extremely successful coach at the Flandreau Indian School and was starting to win state championships and that type of thing. My mom was Mrs. South Dakota. And so I think a lot of what I saw was the subtleties of racism. Maybe the things that people didn't understand about the culture, about Native American people, about our way of life, that type of thing. And so there were subtleties. And not so much against me. I mean, I sure ran into a few times when, I was name called, different things. I don't even like to say them because they're so nasty, but a lot of the subtleties, like I said. So I remember when my dad, and a lot of it was at the Indian school, when my dad was coaching, I remember his teams going out on the road and playing against these non-Indian teams. And, I saw people doing, this and, and just not very nice, to the boys that he coached. And I saw that and it really bothered me. My mom and dad neither one of them were raised very traditionally in the traditional culture. And I think it was because of their age, and a lot of it is because, the culture had to go underground and the language had to go underground for quite some time because it was really not legal to be Lakota, Nakota, or Dakota. And so they didn't teach us any of the language or anything like that, but they led by example. So they weren't traditional, Lakota, Dakota people, but they live the Lakota, Dakota way, I want to say. So I didn't see a lot of it towards myself at that time.
Yeah.
Like I said, the subtleties. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that people were not educated at the time. Yeah. And education to me is the key to everything.
And as you went on to college and started your teaching career and started your own life, did you continue to see those subtleties? And then maybe how, obviously today in the media we see it on TV now, with the police brutality and the riots against that, or the protests against that, and how it's spun different ways.
Yeah.
But, has it been kind of subtle throughout your life, or has there been ups and downs where it's kind of been in your face like it feels to me, it is right now, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, I've been racially profiled. I've been followed around in a store. Um, the when I started the Native American Studies program at Roosevelt, the kids would tell me stories, things that they would hear in the halls and things like that about Indians, And so I really worked through that with them on how to handle that. I've never used my race as a means to an end. And I kind of instilled that in my students to, you go out there and you be the best student you can be, the best athlete you can be, the best friend you can be, the best musician you can be. And you won't give them any reason to, say those things to you. Now, that isn't necessarily always true, because there's always going to be somebody that says something. But for the most part, they did pretty well in handling that. And, I honestly think that I talked about this on the Ollie program the other night, the one that Mike moderated, with systemic racism. And, systemic racism is where the systems are constructed to give people of color a disadvantage. And that can happen in education, it can happen in employment, hiring practices, or even just access and opportunities to things such as healthcare and things like that. I really think that I was a victim of that during my career. And I posted this on Facebook once, and this was right after George Floyd was killed, because I felt that deeply, the racism that I was seeing, just especially on social media. I can't believe, some of the things that I see on there. And, it hurt me. It hurt me to be a victim of that. It hurt me career wise, and when you really stop and think about it, it hurts you financially. It hurts you in your retirement because all of that affects that, So, my big thing is educating people on this, that, we have to level the playing field for all people, that all people can start, on the same plane and have the same opportunity to, advance, whether it be in their career or whether it be in sports or music or whatever. So that's kind of what I've been trying to do.
And do you think that, trying to level that playing field, what are some, how can we make that step forward in leveling that playing field? Does it have to come from our politicians? Does it come from us in the homes? Does it come from the education in the schools? Or, where can we get that first step going?
All of the above. So, I just think that, the power of one voice is powerful, and I think that, whatever we can do within the constructs of where we're working, like I've talked to people about this before, and I'm like, and even in the school systems and that type of thing, all of these businesses and educational institutions and nonprofits and all of these, they all have their commitment to diversity, right? It's a nice little statement that they put on their website and about, accepting all people and giving equal opportunity. But what I found is that commitment to diversity was just a statement on a piece of paper. And so bring that to life. What do your hiring practices look like? What does your board of directors look like? What does your leadership team look like? and let those people have a seat at the table so that they can let their voice be heard. And it's all about respect and representation, you know. So that's I think, we can start at all those different places, but obviously in our home, to teach our kids, kindness, and and our belief in our creator, and all those values that are really important.
Yeah. And, when we talk about, respecting each other and kindness, and sometimes those seem, like you said earlier, about, putting a tag out there. This is what we believe in, on social.
Mhm.
We are kind people. But then to actually go out and do that on a daily basis is very difficult. When, it's difficult for me to have that kindness heart every time I go out, whether it's talking to another white person, a Native American, an African American. But then all of a sudden it gets, if you go out with already a negative mindset about a certain person or a
Mhm.
certain culture, it's very hard. So, I think like you said, that how important it is, to teach our kids and at home say the right things and do the right things, because they're going to catch on to what we're saying and how we feel about other people.
Yeah, exactly. So, how are different cultures represented in, the curriculum for one? I mean, are Native American kids seeing other Native Americans in their textbooks, in their extracurricular activity, those types of things? Are we seeing that? I think we're getting a lot better at that. But the other thing is really teaching an accurate history. I mean, we're here in South Dakota. We have 9 reservations. We have a large Native American population, and it's really important, for us in our state. Well, I would say in all the states, but it's really important for us to understand who our neighbors are, who our fellow South Dakotans are. We walk this land first, and we need. I'm always going to go back to education because that's what I do. I'm an educator, but that's how I grew up with my mom and dad, and I think we need to, just teach people. I had somebody ask me not too long ago, um, "What nationality are you?" And I said, "I'm Lakota." And they said, "Well, does that bother you when people ask you that?" And I said, "No, it doesn't bother me at all. I'd rather you ask than assume something, So, and I think a lot of people of color would agree with that. And so I think it boils down to, you know, relationships and connecting with people, and doing it with a good heart and a good open mind.
Yeah. You mentioned somebody coming up to you and asking you, what are you? And Frank Wallen, I was a couple years ago, went and seen him. He was at Crow Creek uh, performing, and he told the story of coming down an elevator in Chicago with a young lady, and she asked,
Mhm.
she was looking at him, and she finally asked, what are you? Where are you from? And he said, I'm a Native American from South Dakota. And he said that she said, I didn't even know you guys were still around.
Right.
The education. Yeah. Again, we have the reservations here in South Dakota, but there's people across the country that aren't even aware that, the Native American population is still alive and vibrant.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I've had that same experience. And just a couple years ago, my daughter and her family were living in the Springfield, Virginia area. Well, in Springfield, Virginia, which is just a half hour from Washington, D.C. And I went out there for Thanksgiving, and they had been studying Native Americans. And so my daughter mentioned to my oldest granddaughter's teacher that, I was a teacher and I taught that. And so I got roped into going and talking to all these little second graders. Now, mind you, I'm a high school and college teacher. So teaching second graders was out of my wheelhouse, right? And so I consulted with who I consider the master teacher, the pro, my sister-in-law, Margot, who taught in 3rd grade in Flanders for many years. And so I came up with this lesson plan, and I thought it was pretty good. And I was going to speak to like 90 2nd graders. And so we got there early, and we were going to be in the cafeteria or the gym. And I was standing there waiting for all the children to come in, and they were all looking around like, where's our speaker? Where's Eva's grandma? You know? And I go up there, and I swear to God, they were disappointed to see me, because I think they were, you know, we're looking for someone in a buckskin dress with feathers in her hair. So, but it all turned out well. But they think Native Americans are relegated to the past.
Yeah. And, you know, and here in South Dakota, again, you know, we have the reservations not too far from where I'm at. And, you know, but that's worlds away as well. And, you know, how in your life, maybe talk about, you know, growing up in Flanders and, you know, with all the other Native Americans on the reservation, so to speak, you know, how has that impacted you being, you know, not with, you know, the other Native Americans on the reservation, because that's a special place.
Yeah, well, just to make something clear here is that I am not a member of the Flanders Santee Sioux tribe. So I'm a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, and that was my mother's tribe. And so my older brother and I are enrolled in my mom's tribe, and my 2 younger brothers are enrolled in my dad's tribe, which is the Yankton Sioux tribe. So, so I never grew up on my own reservation. You know, the Flanders Santee Sioux tribe, the casino wasn't even built when I was in high school. So there were, you know, it was just a very small population. And, you know, I always felt very connected to Native people.
Mhm.
And even though in my high school graduating class, I think there were only 3 of us. And, you know, I always just felt pretty connected to, you know, the people and the culture, even though I didn't grow up traditionally.
And let's explain that. Let's educate some people on that.
Okay.
An enrolled member, and there's probably some people watching this and say, "What do you mean? There's different Native Americans? Aren't you all the same?" You know, maybe explain.
That's what people think, but there's over 540 federally recognized tribes in the United States. And we have 9 here in South Dakota. So to be a member of a tribe, you have to have lineage. And then what the government used to call a certificate of Indian blood. Okay, so they gave us all enrollment numbers and certificates of Indian blood, you know, just almost like a pedigree, which is, you know, pretty sad. But each tribe has their own qualifications for enrollment. And my mom and dad were both from different tribes. And so for some reason, they decided that my older brother and I would be enrolled in my mom's tribe, and my 2 younger brothers would be enrolled in my dad's tribe. So that's how you become a member of a tribe. And I have a card that says I'm a card carrying member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. And, but I'm off reservations, so I don't, you know, there's not a lot that I'm connected to, you know, as far as tribal politics and things like that.
Yeah. And you know, we could go on and on about the tribal politics. You know, again, we got a national election coming up, and, you know, I'm fascinated by the tribal politics, and maybe some later date we can just focus the show on some of that, because
Sure. Yeah.
that's very interesting, and you know, obviously a hot topic sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
people. So, but
Yeah.
go back to, you know, again, you mentioned your dealings and seeing with racism, a lot of times was, you know, very subtle. And, you know, for me, obviously, you know, I mean, you can't hide what I am. I'm an old white guy, right? And when I go to Lower Brule, or, you know, or when I coached with the Sioux Falls Skyforce, and I'd take a couple of our players to the barbershop in Trenton, New Jersey, and I'm the only white guy in an African-American community,
Yeah.
I'll hear, whoever I'm with, hey, who's the cop with you? Or who's the white boy with you? And, that makes me, they were doing it kind of jokingly, but it was
Mhm.
obviously made me uncomfortable a little bit, because I was different.
Yeah.
I got to imagine, obviously you some thick skin to get through that. But can you kind of talk about, how that makes you feel or how you get through that part of it?
Yeah. When I saw the racism against my dad's teams, um, I felt very angry about it. When I would see some of my students being the subject of that, I would get very angry. But I kept it in. I kept it contained, let's put it that way. And I would just try and, tell people, well, why are you putting this kid in school suspension? Are you, is there equity here? Are you putting this non-name thing that a Native kid is doing? And so I would just try and bring that to people's attention. And I don't know. I'm really outspoken, and if I see something, I'll say something. And so I don't personally really experience it too much right now, but when I see it against somebody else, it really, really angers me. And I feel like I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking about how I have always, probably for about the last 20 years, felt after my kids, graduated, and, I was kind of off doing my own thing. I always felt a pretty deep responsibility to use my education experiences and my voice to, voices of Native American people, the people of the Ocheti Shakoween. That's who the people of South Dakota are, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. So I always felt this great responsibility, and I don't know if that's carrying on my mom and dad's legacy or what, but I I don't put up with much, if you will.
That's good stuff. I think the world needs more of that, because I mean, you don't put up with much, but you're educating people, and you're trying to help people, learn, that all the similarities and the care and compassion that go along with, being a good human being, no matter your background, no matter your culture. And I think that's very important and very commendable to you, that
Oh, thank,
your heart.
thank you.
And so let's, if you want to talk real quick about you touched base on it, the racism panel that you were on, maybe talk about some of the issues that you talked about, or some of the questions that stuck out in your mind that you or the other guest panelists were asked.
Right. So, I kind of touched on a few of those things right now. I mean, today, like the systemic or institutionalized racism. Um, I think one of the things that stuck out to me was the Black Lives Matter movement. Question was asked about that. And, as far as my opinion is that, a few bad actors are always going to make things difficult, but the Black Lives, yeah, I went to the protest in Sioux Falls. I went, and I marched with everybody, and I feel a deep responsibility to other people of color, and the things that are going on with them. But as far as, you know, police brutality and racial injustice, Native Americans experience the same thing, African Americans do, or other people of color. So I've always supported that. Um, Obviously, I don't support, looting and rioting and that type of thing. But like I said, there's always going to be some bad actors. in that. So that was one of the questions that came up. What else came up?
I think, like you said, with the Black Lives Matter, there's, to me, there's there's the Black Lives Matter, the organization that,
mhm.
and there's bad actors in there, but the movement itself, I don't know how anybody can be against it.
Yeah, yeah,
Is, all just, we're just asking for that seat at the table, for some recognition, to be treated fairly, a level playing field, so to speak.
right. I agree with you. I don't know how anybody could be against that. People of color are not saying we want to be better than you. Black lives matter, Native American lives matter, Hispanic life. We're not saying that we want to be better than you. We want to be equal to you. And that's, so that's where a lot of people are saying, well, white lives matter too. Well, of course they do. All lives matter. But it always hasn't been that way. It always hasn't been that way. So it's just symptomatic of what's been going on, for a while, as far as racial injustice goes. And then, it all started with Kaepernick and taking a knee and that type of thing. And I understand it. And, and I even went back and I looked at the interviews when all this started, and he never said he was trying to disrespect our flag or our military or anything like that. It was just to bring attention to those issues. And, it angered sure got a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And the attention, again, you can pull out those, the bad apples, in a protest, that start the looting and the rioting and things like that. But, the protests are not, that's what they're not there for that. They're to open our eyes and our hearts to the bigger picture of what's going on. And I hope we can, as a society, continue to do that. And, even when our election's done, whatever way it goes, I hope the conversation continues,
Mhm.
because I know, even for me, again, I can say it all the time. I have Black friends, I have Native American friends, I help out on the reservation. I coach African American kids. I can say that all I want, but the reality is, I'm a white guy from South Dakota, and I don't know everything that they're going through. I know, I've seen a lot of it, but I don't know everything they're going through, because I wasn't
Mhm.
in that house when they were growing up, and I haven't seen them walking in a gym every day, and or walking into a classroom and being different. So uh,
Mhm.
it's really opened my eyes up, even though, I think I'm a good guy. It's opened my eyes up to, what, you got to even be on the lookout and watch what you say. And, when somebody else says something, like you said, you got to be man enough. I got to be man enough to say, hey, that's inappropriate. That's not right.
Mhm.
It's very
Yeah.
difficult at times.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that a couple of my kids at Roosevelt, when I was teaching there, would come in, oh my gosh, I heard these kids talking about this. Well, the kids that were, making these comments didn't realize that this person was Native, because she wasn't, she was Native. She was probably at least a quarter, but they were making these comments unbeknownst to them. And she came into my classroom and she said, well, this is what these kids said, and it bothered her, but I think she ended up saying, hey, I'm Native too. And then they kind of,
Absolutely.
they were quiet after that. But yeah.
So we went, we're going to try to keep this to about 20, 30 minutes. And we're at about 45. So we'll start wrapping this up. And I really,
Okay.
again, appreciate your time. And so anything before we wrap up that you would want to touch on, or a topic that you would want to talk about?
I just think, right now, if people are really serious about, um, wanting this social justice, that they have to step out of their comfort zones and, reach out to, there's no shame in asking a question you think is silly, in your organization or your school or wherever. If you want to see that diversity, if you want to, make things better, ask people to join you, to be at the table, to have a voice, to talk to you about these things. I mean, that's only going to make things better. I stepped during the pandemic. Because I wasn't able to see my family. I mean, I was kind of quarantined here in South Dakota. I golfed a lot, just because it's outside and you can, drive your own cart. And so I think I can't even remember, but I think I shot over 70 rounds of golf this summer. And I remember thinking, it's very rare you see a person of color on the golf course around here. I'm saying.
Yep.
Now I can go up to Flandreau and, golf up there, and there's, a lot of natives up there that golf, whatever. But around here, you don't see that many. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm the only brown one, I get pretty dark in the summer. I'm like the only really dark person out here, So just having people have a voice in your organization or your club or your team, your sports team, or whatever it is. I follow youth sport. I follow all sports. I'm a total sports girl. So I follow all sports, but I really have a passion for following young people, especially high school and college age students who are Native, and really want them to succeed, and given some of the opportunities that they're not able to have. I mean, they don't have the same. I mean, I think about like golf, for example. Some of these kids don't have access to a golf course 50 miles away. But yet we here in Sioux Falls, if you're on the golf team, you have access to all these different courses. You have access to golf professionals, golf lessons, that type of thing. And so it's just, the opportunity, we need to give people more opportunity, especially our kids.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's just bringing light to people that, and they're good people, but sometimes you just get your tunnel vision. I'm taking care of my world, which is about this big, and you got to open your eyes up this big, and there's a whole different world out here. And, if you're really, we need more people to get out of their comfort zone, out of their box, out of their tunnel vision, and really take a look around and see what they can do, in their communities to help other communities, and, just progress on this thing that we got going. We're hundreds of years too late, obviously, but we got to start somewhere, and we got to keep this ball rolling and get it going.
For sure.
So,
sure.
Biggest question, I guess, is how's the golf game?
I wouldn't say that I'm like just a casual golfer. So, I'm okay. I'm a 14 handicap. So, that's not too bad, I guess. And, I can play around. I played in like 13 golf tournaments this summer. So, and then with my league and then my other golf or whatever. But yeah, I really love it. I mean, there's nothing better than getting outside and smelling the grass and, hitting the ball around, as far as I'm concerned. My mom and dad got me into golf. They were both big golfers.
Very good. Very good. I love golf too. And I played more golf this year than I have in the last 10 years combined because of, again, and it was awesome. But I really appreciate your time. And again, let's do this again and, continue the conversation and continue your good work, and good luck with everything you got going on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And again, like I said, we'll do this again and keep this going. And for everybody out there that if you have any questions ever, let me know. Marcia's on social media. Go ahead and look her up and ask her any questions, because I think the conversations are important to have. And we're just trying to get through this better than, and leave it better for our kids. And
our kids and well, not my kids are adults now, but my grandkids,
Absolutely.
So
yeah. Tomorrow again I think we're going at about 2:30 tomorrow with Jake Terry, Elk Point and Jefferson. For all the football teams playing tonight, good luck. What a fun time to, Marcia, as a former
Go Riders.
Yeah, they're having a great year. They have what before we leave, I had Weston Frank on here, and Weston was one of your students, and Weston comes to speak with me, and it was awesome that you guys knew each other. And when I had him on here, you made a comment or something on the post, and he was very appreciative of you. So that had to be cool to see a former.
Yes. He was just, I really liked having him in class. He was a cool kid in high school, and now he's like the mayor of Mount Vernon or something. It's like, okay.
And he is just killing it out there with his music.
Yes.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, he's on the road somewhere and making music and recording music and stuff. So he's got a great story and he's a good friend, and I really appreciate him. So Weston Haig, how are you doing? Hopefully everything in Mount.
Hey, Weston.
All right, so we got to go. Okay. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.